What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 105, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meath, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends and co-hosts, Roffle and Corbett. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. We got some buffs, and as everyone knows, buffs to cards are universally good and only good, and much better than nerfs in terms of shaping the metagame in a way that we want. So everyone's happy about that. And I just woke up from about a week-long nap. So I assume that's going to be the case. In all seriousness, I personally had a fun time playing Hearthstone this week. I was actually making a legitimate push for leaderboard with a variety of decks, and then started trying to play Warrior, and that stopped me in my tracks because Warrior's still not a good class, it turns out. I took Corb's, you can just run the neutral package in any Renathal Reno deck a little bit too seriously, and it turns out if that class is Warrior, it does not apply. So,
yeah, some very important caveats on that one. I think there might also be a DH exception as well, but we'll get into that a little bit. I'm doing great. I woke up about 15 minutes ago, and it's been genuinely a fun week. I did have a moment of tilt. I had a slight weakness. Everyone else was posting their incredibly well thought out feelings about Hearthstone balance, and I simply tweeted out F Renathal. But since then I've been feeling a lot better, and even Renathal is not bothering me nearly as much as well, despite what my shit post would lead people to believe.
All right, good vibes all around for this brand new patch, it sounds like. So let's just kind of hop into it. So we got a small amount of nerfs, but we also got a ton of buffs, including some very surprising ones that seemed kind of impactful, even in Wild. So let's hop into it. Let's do nerfs first. Let's start with Celestial Alignment. One we kind of knew it was coming. Got changed to 8 mana. Set your mana crystals to 0. Set all the caustic cards in your hand and deck to 1. So it's only one-sided, not the other. I don't know how effective this is because I haven't seen it since the patch. So I guess that means it was 100% effective, right?
partially, and I have seen it, and one time I stole an alignment with Theotar, another time the opponent's hero exploded because they played alignment without the support cards, which is going to happen a lot more as a result of this. We talked about it last week, and that was the point I personally made and think is true. I stand by my statement. I think it's kind of like a quest mage style nerf where people look at it and superficially it seems like it does nothing. The consequences in play, though, are greater than I think you would actually intuit, because again, memorable things like the opponent having all of the pieces to combo off on you the turn that they play the alignment are more memorable, so you think that they happen more often than they actually do. And so they don't always have the Floops Gloop, they don't always have the Pride Seeker, and sometimes their hero just explodes. And I think that, yeah, it's about where I expected it to be.
Yeah, it's probably, again, I haven't really seen much of it either, like Roffle was talking about. The one game that I did play against it, I was playing Dude Paladin, and they played the alignment, and I didn't instantly die, and I got to actually kind of play cards, and I managed to lethal them 2 or 3 turns after they played the alignment, because I guess they were playing something that was a bit more the Renathal version that wasn't all in on an OTK, but it felt so much nicer. I actually got to do stuff, so that was really good. I don't know, we'll have to see, but I'm sure it is weaker. It looks slightly, very slightly weaker, so far. But I'm just happy that I'm not seeing it. I think that's the biggest win so far. Whether it's good or bad, the less alignment that I see, the better. And for that reason, I'm very satisfied with the change right now.
Yeah, preach. I have nothing to add to that. If I don't see it, I will be happy for the rest of my days, because frick alignment, All right, we did get a second change here to Hunter. So the Stag Spirit Wild Seed, this is the one that's dormant for 3 turns. Gives you a 3/2 weapon instead of a 4/2 weapon. The only time this has really been noticeable is you feel a little less bad when you override your weapon to play a Harpoon Gun. And I think that's the only noticeable change, because I think Wild Seeds in general, even though this technically was a nerf to 4 cards, still feels... Was it 4 cards or 3 cards? Technically 4, I think. But doesn't really feel super noticeable, and it feels like Wild Seeds still just go-to package in 100x like we might have predicted.
Yeah, they're still good cards. This one in particular is still the one that I'm always crossing my fingers for because it gives me 6 damage. Like 6 damage is less than 8, but it's still 6. So sure.
Yeah, it is funny that it's still the best one. It feels like by a country mile. Well, sometimes you really want that rush damage, but I don't know. This change feels good. Hunter still feels very fun to play, I think.
All right, Snowfall Guardian. So 6 mana 5/5 freeze all other minions, no longer gain stats. And so I think Roffle was right. This is now purely a defensive tool, like it probably should have been. Which also means that it's not an auto include in every shaman deck. That being said, I think it's still a good card if you're playing a super defensive build, right? Like if you're playing something like a combo Shudderwalk Shaman, if you're playing maybe Rena Shaman, it's probably still good because with Parrots and Macaw, or with the Macaw, with Bran, with Grumble, you can still kind of hard lock opponents out of the board. You just are killing them a lot slower. So it is still an effective tool, but I don't know. People used to run this card and stuff like. Even Shaman, any Shaman deck, people are like, man, should we really be playing Snowfall Guardian anyways in this deck? And now that feels like it's definitely not the case.
Yeah, and that to me seems indicative of a problem. You know,
yeah.
if you're even considering playing this card in even Shaman, like what is wrong with that card? And what was wrong with the card was like the lethality that it presents and the fact that it's too offensive while stalling out the opponent. I've heard rumors over on Twitter that Snowfall sucks now. I very quickly pulled the reins on that one because I personally played some free shaman myself with a little bit of Nathria. Now that like supposedly Snowfall is bad now and I'm allowed to play it. But almost every win that I got was still just on the back of chaining Snowfall Guardians because it turns out if you poke out your deck, you draw Grumble, Snowfall, and if you already had a Parrot in hand, the opponent doesn't get to play the game for a while, and that still happens. The difference is you're hitting them for 5 instead of 25 every turn, so okay, it takes longer to kill them, but they still don't get to play the game, so what does it matter? Depending on the matchup, you're locking your opponent out of playing cards, which it turns out in a card game is an effective strategy for winning that card game. And as we'll talk about with some of the buffs, like there's maybe been a resurgence in some of the board-based strategies that we had been missing lately, and Snowfall is still good against those. And if anything, maybe it's a little bit more frustrating because I still had a lot of concedes happening when I was grumbling that double Snowfall because the opponent wasn't playing the game and it was still stupid and gross. But we talked about it last week. People don't like having their board frozen for multiple turns, understandably. And that's what this card still does. It's still, in my opinion, a good card.
It's interesting. The like draw and win rate stuff for the card in standard. There's like one Renathal list that I'm looking at where Snowfall is actually like the second from the bottom card. Like behind the like ahead of the Renathal, and that's it. It's the only card. And there's another list with a few more games where it's ahead of a couple more, like the Famished, the Infused card, and like Bran. But it's one of the lower performing cards in that list as well. Does that mean you have to go out and cut your Snowfall Guardians in standard? Probably not, because Snowfall enables other stuff, right? Like you still need that defensive fallback. It makes a card like Macaw a lot better as well. And then more specifically looking at Wild, Snowfall probably has like this much more room for abuse, it feels like, in Wild. Like Roffle was talking about, the Polk out can kind of stack the deck, but just things like Grumble and Shudderwalk obviously become like a lot better with that Snowfall effect in play. So I think Snowfall will be fine. But man, the power drop off has been crazy because like that was your best card like by a country mile in Shaman, at least looking at standard stuff. And also in Wild. And now the fact that it's one of the weaker performing cards, like at least in that sort of grouping now, it isn't just like a draw auto win the game button. So it's definitely gonna be, a thing that you need to be playing at Shaman, and it will be like the game plan. But man, Shaman's like a lot weaker because there's a lot less matchups where it's gonna be that effective, like even lock and things we talked about last week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You can definitely get away without Snowfall Guardian. I've been playing a lot of Shaman without it. I will say I've been playing a less kind of defensive build, playing a lot more tempo with Murlocs and bringing back Galakrond, actually. and which has been really really good. And then you don't like the Snowfalls doesn't synergize super well when you're playing like the Galakron stuff, because then you play Shadowwalk, you summon these 8/8s, and then they get frozen, which is kind of awkward. And the Galakron stuff has been good enough for me. But again, I don't know what's the best way to build it. Maybe you are still supposed to be running the Snowfall stuff, just because it's really good against certain decks. And we'll see kind of how the meta pans out and whether we want Snowfall Guardian against the majority of decks. But that being said, I think what we said last week of Shaman's not dead, even if Snowfall is a lot worse. That's true, right? Shadowwalk Shaman still exists, but it does miss, I think, OG Snowfall a little bit, even if nobody else does. So, the last two here, Vile Library. I don't think I've seen a single imp block since the patch. You've seen one? Yeah. It doesn't seem like this was like a week one fad. People really haven't revisited it. And I feel like the nerf to Vile Library kind of hasn't re-incentivized anybody to try it out again, which is a little bit unfortunate. And then the big one, Kobold Illusionist. Big Rogue is dead. At least Big Rogue as we knew it. Thank God. I think the biggest kind of response to Big Rogue going away is we have seen these board-based decks come back really quickly. Specifically looking at like stuff like Dude Paladin, and the big one, Even Shaman. I've seen so much Even Shaman, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But those decks couldn't wait for Big Rogue to get nerfed, and now that it's gone, they're enjoying their time in the sun.
They also couldn't wait for people to stop running Snowfall Guardian in their decks as well, right? So I mean they were the big winners from this patch, and so I think it makes a lot of sense that we're seeing them pop back up. Unfortunately, like Imp Block kind of fits that bill as well, but it took a bit of a hit, and I think that the Vile Library went from a broken card to a very good card, kind of like Snowfall Guardian, but like a very good card is sometimes just not enough to carry an archetype in Wild, in particular. So unfortunately, we may not be seeing a whole lot more of Imp Block lately, because like the lack of that one extra stat, like it was noticeable when it was missing in the game that I played against it, and kind of unfortunate. Last thing I'll say about that is that I think this is one that's probably not going to be a good candidate for a revert either, because we had it for about 2 weeks, so there's no nostalgia attached to it, and that'll probably apply to anything that's nerfed in this quick a turnaround. So I'm not sure there's much hope for Imp Block moving forward unless it gets some mini set support.
Yeah, I mean, Vile still looks good. It's just not it's not Vile Library like the initial version, which was like just stupid. But yeah, I don't know if people are going to be too excited to play Imp Block. It feels like this might be one of those print cards, one expansion, and that's kind of like forgotten about for a long time. We too tend to see a little bit of that.
Unfortunately, it's another Murloc Warlock, right? Like that's two
exactly
sets in a row with Warlock, where it's just like they get this throwaway set, but then again, they also got Gigafin, so not really feeling too bad.
Well, and we did get Impending Catastrophe, so you know what? Like sometimes you just get a little bonus. The Big Rogue chain feels so good to me, man. Like it feels so satisfying. I feel like it's made my ladder experience I don't know, just like twice as good, as 10 times as good as it was before. I despise that deck. Again, we talked about all the issues that Big Rogue had. And for me in particular, I just hated the idea of like WoW becoming even more incentivized to be off board. And yeah, not killing the Big Rogue feels great. Like I hated that deck, so very happy. Part of me does think, like, wow, what a really successful, good balance change that we have in Wild. What if we had another one? There is kind of that thought. It's like, this feels good. More, please. But I don't also want to come across as too whiny, because we did get a very quick change, and it's a very successful change. But I would like to hear a little bit more about why this is so good. Why not more of this, please? Thank you.
Yeah, Big Rogue was really just Big Shaman 2.0, and you can't convince me otherwise, because it was so consistently online at the same pace as Big Shaman. It was so popular, especially at higher ranks, and just completely absolutely dominating the latter experience. So yeah, like that and the reemergence of board-based strategies has really been what improved my I don't know, my week in Hearthstone last week is like just being able to not necessarily only play those board-based strategies, but also play decks that like are looking to play around those board-based strategies, which is typically the control decks that people want to be at least viable. And you know, I was playing some Reno Hunter. I was playing some like just straight control warlock. Like, yeah, it felt pretty good to play those decks, and yeah, I was enjoying myself.
Yeah. The want for more is maybe a conversation for the end of the stream of like, I mean, this was really like we got our wild specific balance patch for the expansion. Like we normally get 1 or 2 per expansion cycle. This was our one, super successful, right? It did what it wanted to do, and it made the wild meta a much better place. So at least for that, I think very successful set of nerfs, especially looking at wild, right? Alignment, Snowfall Guardian, and Big Rogue. All 3 of those changes, I think, very, very positive, kind of for the health of the format. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to target only wild cards to have a strong impact in wild, and that's what we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like it's not Flogel Tox, but hitting Snowfall kind of, you know, obviously makes Shaman a lot less popular, and so in some ways it doesn't make a difference, right? Like if you're seeing less Shaman, it doesn't really matter which card you hit necessarily. And so yeah, these 3 were all kind of like, one of them was at the very top of the list, and then Alignment and Shaman are obviously kind of like up on my list a little bit, so it's really good that we got kind of a lot of them, I think.
Yeah. All right, so not a ton of deep, I think, discussion about these because we talked a lot about them last week, right? We kind of knew that these were coming. The stuff we didn't see coming, we got like 20-something buffs, and some really, really unexpected ones at that. So Demon Hunter got like 6 or 7, because Demon Hunter sucks in Standard and in Wild, but...
Well,
yep. There we go.
well, not much has changed on that front, but well, you know, we'll dive in.
They tried, okay? They tried their best. So 2 of these changes, Relic Vault got, so this is the Demon Hunter location. Your next relic you play this turn cast twice, got buffed from 3 to 2. Big change. Turns out the relics kind of still suck, even with a buff to Relic of Extinction. So the Relic of Extinction went from 2 mana to 1. Deal 1 damage to random enemy minion twice. Improve your future relics. This whole relic package in Demon Hunter still just...
They're better though. Like I played relics day 1 and it was miserable. I played relics day 1 of the buffs, and like relic vault actually did a thing when I played it, whereas like I played for about an hour and a half with it at 3 mana, never activated it a single time. Now it actually does something, and gotta say the Relic of Extinction like felt pretty good when doubled up with the Relic Vault too, especially with the reemergence of those board-based strategies. So I'm not saying relics are good. I'm saying if they turn the dial just a little bit more, this could be something that's worth like investigating in the format, because I don't know, I was surprised. I was expecting another just complete flop with these cards, and like the Relic of Extinction in particular seemed to overperform for me.
Yeah, I think the relics are pretty decent, but I do think that there's a lack of sort of overall game plan, overall support, overall direction, like something that you want to be doing. And this is just, again, always covering back to the Demon Hunter card pool, kind of lacking compared to some other classes. But the relics themselves seem pretty good. It's just, can only do so much for a class that was lagging that far behind, and is still lagging pretty far behind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. I made 3 mana 16/16 worth of stats at one point. So, like, that's pretty good, but, like, that's still not game winning in Wild, especially at the pace in which it takes to get that online. So, like, it feels like with what we talked about with Jace as well, right? Where it just kind of, it needs that little extra finisher. For a while, Multi-Strike was that at 1 mana, because, like, that was an obscene amount of damage for so little mana. But, barring something of that quality, or multiple things of that quality, or something big that can, like, close out a game, you're not really relicing into anything. Like, the draw relic looks cool, but, like, you need to if you're not closing out the game, what does it matter if you like reduce the cost of cards?
Yeah. So they are better, but they still suck. I think is the conclusion here. I don't know. Maybe the second wave of balance changes to Demon Hunter in like a month or so. Maybe we'll see some more buffs. The card draw one is the one that I really want to see buffed, but I know that's dangerous. I know it's dangerous because of the discount as well. But if that one gets buffed, then I'm like actually interested in the relics. I think personally.
I think the way that you can just buff it is simply by adding another good relic in the mini set, because like if you're playing additional relics, you're ramping up the future relics that you play. So like if you play another or if you print another low cost relic, maybe a 2-cost one, so now that Relic of Extinction is 1 mana, you make the Relic of Dimensions stronger when you get to it because you've already ramped it up. So like the mechanic itself, you don't necessarily have to touch the cards individually in order to make them better. You just need some sort of payoff that it isn't Zymox, because he's cool and not bad if you get him infused, but like he doesn't win the game.
All right, let's talk about a couple other Demon Hunter cards here. Let's talk about aggro Demon Hunter or just aggressive Demon Hunter archetypes in general. Bibliomite went from a 2-mana 4/4 to a 2-mana 5/4. Battlecry, choose a card in your hand to shuffle into your deck. Magnifying Glaive is now a 3-mana 3/2. After your hero attacks, draw until you have 3 cards. So things that Roffle was right about. And Battle-Worn Vanguard. So this is a card that's been like nerfed before. I believe this is an Alterac Valley card. It was originally a 2-mana 2/2, got nerfed to 2-mana 1/1. They reverted the nerf. It's back to a 2-mana 2/2 after your hero attacks. Summon 2 1/1 Fellwings. So these probably all go in aggressive Demon Hunter archetypes. I know I put a little bit of this on Tuesday when the patch dropped. It feels a lot better. Like Bibliomite feels like a real card now. Magnifying Glaive feels like a real card now. The issue is it's still Demon Hunter, and it still kind of feels like it's missing that, right? Like I don't really want to run Jace in my aggressive Demon Hunter deck, but I kind of feel like I have to, because that's the damage you need to end games. And when you have to run an 8-drop in your aggressive Demon Hunter deck and then want to draw the 8-drop so you can win the game, it doesn't feel good enough. Demon Hunter still feels like it's missing like just a couple more solid, strong pieces like in the core of the class.
And I also think that this deck in particular is suffering from the prevalence of Renathal more than others, because like you said, Jace just feels necessary to close out those games. But like if the opponent was at 30 health, that probably wouldn't be the case, right? Because every time, like I played this deck before the buffs, and every time I was like about to close out the game, it's just like I just run out of steam when they're at when they're at negative 34, and it's like, well, this game is often over in most other circumstances, and now it's not. So there's a little bit of extra damage probably helps offset that a little bit, but I don't know, the stats kind of do indicate that it is, because like Demon Hunter is doing better surprisingly in Wild than it is in Standard, and it's not like the hovering near 40% that it was. Like the spread of win rates for the classes, which isn't the best indicator for the health of a format, but like it's pretty narrow in Wild, and Demon Hunter is definitely not great in a great spot right now, but I don't know, like this deck is close. This deck is close. Unfortunately, they got an absolute trash tier legendary in that 4-mana 7/7, which is just miserable to play. Because I tried. But I think this deck is close, and may actually have a little bit more direction with another buff that we saw in Abyssal Depths, because you can actually use that to ensure a Lady Setheno draw early, and her paired with the 0-mana spell is kind of nutty, or Dispose of Evidence is kind of nutty. Like I think that's another deck where it's like a few low-cost spells short of just being the juice. Like being able to tutor for her specifically, like hoard some of those low-cost spells, or just use Magnifying Glaive to refill your hand into those. I think that deck's close too. So those are both things that I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, Roffle definitely hit on the most important thing, which is the Renathal. Right? Like this is terrible for anything that's more more burn oriented. Like you can definitely get away with like a lot of aggressive decks as long as they're far more focused on board development. So things like even Shaman can obviously like still punch up a Renathal Druid if the Druid is just like kind of passing the first couple turns. Demon Hunter is a little bit different because it is much more about over the top bursts and things like that. And so I think like odd DH would feel really good. Like this current version of the list, I think it would actually be very, very solid if you just kind of like go back an expansion. But that's not the world we live in anymore. So at the same time, I'm probably like less optimistic than what Ruffle was talking about Demon Hunter. I think the class is lagging pretty hard in Wild, and I just don't really see a viable path for it moving forward. Uh, Even with like a mini set coming out, like because it is only just a handful of cards, right? Like I think DH is just on ice unless they rebuff some stuff like more, which they very well probably have to do, right? In standard, like we're talking about these buffs and how they might have improved Warrior and Demon Hunter by like 5%, but these classes are still completely and utterly trash in standard. So either next expansion or maybe another set of buffs might end up helping these two classes, Warrior and Demon Hunter.
Yeah. I am still kind of secretly hoping that they will eventually revert the nerfs to some beloved staples like Skull Gul'dan, please. But I know that's kind of a pipe dream. But like I said, I am personally in the boat of I think it still needs like 4 or 5 high quality pieces in order to make these decks good enough. And I don't know. Whenever we get them, I just hope it's not too late. Where it's been outclassed again by something else. We do still have 2 more Demon Hunter buffs. Roffle kind of hinted at one of them, Abyssal Depths. So Abyssal Depths seems like a pretty good card now. It's kind of like the rogue, what is it called? Shroud of Concealment now, essentially, where there's a 3-mana shadow spell, draw your 2 lowest cost minions. So this kind of can fit in a whole variety of shells now. The shell that I tried was just a big Demon Hunter with Vandar and Sir Spinley. And so you play Abyssal Depths on 3, you play Vandar on 4, and then on turn 5, you Finley away your hand into a handful of discounted minions and do the thing. It happened pretty frequently. Turns out, though, you kind of still die when you pass like the first 4 turns because Demon Hunter doesn't have a ton of recovery unless you like high roll like the Masked Reveler off the Spinley into like a Naptalon or a Scrapyard Colossus or something like that, and then you stabilize. But regardless, I think Abyssal Depths in general seems like a very strong card now, and currently looks like it's probably just a staple for a variety of Demon Hunter decks.
It's an arcane intellect that tutors specific minions, so there's a lot of potential there. I think it's probably better than Shroud of Concealment long term, right? Just because like Rogue benefits from Shadow Concealment because it is rogue and has like things to shroud into, but long term the card stays this way. Like Vandar is a card, like I already mentioned Lady Setheno. Like there are a lot of things that you can do with a very specific tutor like this, and that's why it was initially printed at 4 mana rather than 3, because being able to choose the card type is of value. Probably more valuable than giving your minions stealth like Shroud of Concealment does. But that aside, I played a Vandar deck as well. I wasn't trying to do Finlay things because I still wanted the opportunity to, just like jam an on curve Vandar if I drew it, which happened quite a bit. But like, card was still good even after Vandar because it fetches your reduced cost stuff. But yeah, I'm probably going to take it for a spin on a Lady Setheno deck, and it just. Yeah, it's got good long-term potential, I think, which is important for a Demon Hunter, even if it's not doing super busted things right now.
Yeah, definitely agree about the potential upside. Obviously, like switcheroo and these types of effects. Targeted draw is very, very good, and this is about as specific of a tutor as we can kind of get for this kind of effect, which is great. Also, just like can potentially pair very well with something like the Demon Hunter quest, because you might be able to, target out, help complete your quest, and then get a discount on these assumingly cheap combo minions, which could definitely like speed up an OTK. I'm just picturing like Sathino at 2 mana or something and things like that. So yeah, good card. Definitely a keep an eye out in the future type of effect now, which is nice.
We do have one last Demon Hunter buff. I told we had a ton. Brute. Brute is back. Back to 7 mana. 7 mana, 6/7 Demon Taunt. Costs 1 less for each card drawn this turn. Brute me dude. You can hear the cries now. I can also hear the cries of the deck still not being very good at all in Wild.
Yeah, like it was fringe playable at best to begin with in Wild, and then things have changed quite a bit since it was like a deck previously. So I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of hopium if we really do get more of those board-based strategies that we've been alluding to, just because setting up a wall of brutes is a thing. But I don't know, that's maybe more of a down the line type of deal when the deck gets more support, if it ever gets more support. Just I guess more card draw would be the thing that it wants. Maybe just like a relic brute Demon Hunter.
I'm basically looking at this as an early revert. Like, I don't think it's going to make any impact between now and probably until next rotation. So it's kind of like an extended sneak peek, I think.
And it probably doesn't really do anything in standard either, right? Because it lost all of the, like, Demon Hunter lost all of its card draw in standard, so it's not really a, like, Quest Demon Hunter can't really be a deck right now.
Yeah.
All right. So all of those Demon Hunter things, I think TLDR don't really shift the needle on Demon Hunter in Wild very much at all. Maybe the Magnifying Glaive and the Bibliomite are like the two to keep an eye on. And then maybe Relics, maybe, if we get something that, like, in the mini set. But, yeah, still not a very good time to be a Demon Hunter enjoyer, I guess, in either format. So unfortunate for that. Let's move into Paladin here. Paladin getting some pretty exciting buffs, actually. Let's start with maybe the least exciting, but I feel like for Roffle, this is going to be the most exciting. So the Countess, so this is the new 7 mana 7/7 legendary, where if you had, I'm trying to remember the text because I haven't seen her since preview season, where if you have no neutral cards in your deck at the time of playing her, I believe, you get these legendary invitations. You get 3 of them. The legendary invitations used to be 3 mana spells that said discover a legendary minion from another class. It costs 0. So the invitations have been buffed from 3 mana to 2. So if you, like Roffle, are a pure Paladin enjoyer, small little buff here for you.
Very small.
Very, very small indeed. All right, now let's get into the exciting ones. Let's start with Warhorse Trainer, because this card is absolutely insane now. So Warhorse Trainer had already been buffed once when it rotated to the core set. It got buffed from a 3 mana 2/4 to a 3 mana 3/4. Your Silver Hand recruits gave +1 attack. They really wanted to try to make sure that Dude Paladin was playable in Standard, and so they buffed this card to the moon. This is now a 3 mana 3/4. Your Silver Hand recruits have +2 attack and taunt. For some god knows what reason, they now have taunt. This card is absolutely insane, absolutely busted. Any Dude Paladin archetype, whether it's Odd Paladin or Dude Paladin, or if you're playing Questline Paladin for some reason, you should be running this card, because this card is absolutely gross and busted. And funnily enough, probably still not going to see any play in Standard.
Yeah, I don't know why the taunt was the thing that was egregious. Like, giving it +2 attack is the absurd thing that this deck does, or this card now does, right? That allows you to trade over so many things with your dudes so easily. The taunt is helpful because it protects this minion.
That's why it's egregious, I think. It protects
I guess that's true. Okay. But like, I mean, you already have tools to like protect this minion in Odd Paladin and Dude Paladin as it stands. It's much easier to do it now. You can do it with simply like a hero power, which is kind of silly. It also protects your face, like against like, I don't know, pirate rogue enjoyers are vomiting and pissing themselves right now seeing this card, as well as the Renathal deck. Like, Like little tiny taunts are miserable for that deck, and that's what this does. It just makes a whole lot of little tiny taunts. But yeah, this card is outrageous. Like it seems to be single-handedly reviving Odd Paladin. A lot of people are having decent success. We're going back to the old days of Odd Paladin versus even Shaman, truly the ultimate showdown. And it's like it it's wild, man. But I'm here for it. I've missed not playing these decks because I find them incredibly boring to pilot, but playing against them I think is at least somewhat fun, unless the even totem or even shaman has an anchored totem early, then it's miserable.
I saw a funny reaction where Hijo was playing some Miracle Rogue and he was mega lolling. He was laughing at the odd Paladin player, as he made like a 22 Edwin on turn 3. And then the Paladin played a Warhorse Trainer. And then that Edwin ended up bumping into little 3/1s for 4 straight turns, and Hijo lost the game. And he was absolutely molding it. It was great. It was a hilarious reaction. I was watching it all happen. The Warhorse Trainer is... I mean, it's busted. Like, it's so stupid. It's the best card in the deck. It's better than Quartermaster. It's better than Muster. It's just, like, the reason to play Odd Paladin. I'm not entirely sure how we got something pushed this hard. Especially because, again, Dude Paladin, not actually going to be a thing in Standard. There just aren't enough cards that say Silverhand Recruit on them. Like, the deck doesn't make any sense in that format. But, yeah, this has pretty much pushed Odd Paladin into clear viability. It's not probably, like, Tier 1 or anything, but particularly, like, Diamond to Legend, that kind of range, it's looking like firm Tier 2 kind of territory, which is insane. Like, the deck was dead. Absolutely just dumpstered. And it's completely come back now, so...
One card. A singular card. Like...
I mean, we've seen that before, right? We've seen that before where one card just absolutely brings like a deck to the forefront, but this was kind of like out of left field. I saw the patch notes and I like had to read this 4 times to make sure that I wasn't like misreading something. I was like, okay, where's the downside to this now?
That is a very like repeated reaction. I would say there's a lot of like they buffed what like when going through the patch notes for the first time.
It used to be a 2/4 as well. Do you remember those days? Yeah. Like it wasn't always even a spider tank. Like, does it still need to be a spider tank when it does all these things already? Like, I know that's
real with you though. I'll be real. I really hope they don't nerf it. Like,
no, they won't.
They can't because Paladin not only doesn't have cards that say Silverhand Recruit in Standard, it doesn't have cards in Standard. So like it's not a class. They're not going to nerf cards from a class that doesn't exist. Like that would be silly.
I think there's only one card that we might be talking about a revert on the buff.
Yeah. All right. Warhorse Trainer was just one of the 3 Dude Paladin support pieces that got buffed, though. Stand Against Darkness. It used to be a 5-mana spell from Whispers of the Old Gods that they moved into the core set that said summon 5 1/1 recruits. It is now a 4-mana spell that summons 5 1/1 recruits. I know Corbin and I were co-oping a little bit, and we were kind of just talking about how they've been recently buffing all of these token-generating spells, right? Now it's Stand Against Darkness. It was previously like Fiendish Circle, and they make them actually feel playable, which is nice. And Stand Against Darkness, the buff is super nice. Being able to go Warhorse Trainer and then protect it because your dudes have taunt, and then summon 5 3/1 taunts with a spell seems absolutely insane. Obviously, this means you're playing Dude Paladin and not Odd Paladin. I don't know if that's the way to go, but I know that's what I was jamming on day 1 with some Dude Paladin, and it seemed pretty good.
I mean, this card wasn't good enough for Odd Paladin anyway, so it's not like you're taking anything away from it. But I don't know. It's like I see it as modernizing the card, right? Because like we have seen some power creep since then, and so you're just bringing an old card up to the level of cards that have been released since then. And I don't know, that's the kind of buff that I'm into. Whether or not like it becomes a playable card, I think it's probably a good, safe thing to do. It's clearly not enough for Paladin, and that's fine. You can also play it in some even Paladin, which was seeing some life not that long ago, so it could be another look. And like you might even rethink how you play Odd Paladin now. You've got Cariel, so you can slow things down a bit. You've got the potential for like Kael'thas into Denathrius. If you play dude generators that can add some 1/1s to your hand, you could get like a turn 7 Denathrius after having a board full of dudes from Stand Against Darkness blow up. Like I think that's interesting to look at, and like I said, the deck was already doing fine. It got great haul. Like there's maybe some potential there that isn't being explored yet because people are hyper fixating, rightfully, on the Warhorse trainer change, right? Like, but there's more to this patch than just that for Paladin, so could be interesting.
Yeah, I really like this buff because, we already have like kind of proof with Fiendish Circle that this is fine. Like, it is nice that you can kind of just look at this example and you kind of know what you're going to get, right? You're going to get a strong card that's not too broken and that just feels much more appropriate and satisfying to play. I'm kind of bummed out a little bit though because Dude Paladin to me is like a much more fun version of the deck than Odd Paladin. But it seems way worse. Like, it seems way worse right now. It turns out that button is actually very strong. Compared to this all the even Silverhand recruit stuff. The even Paladin shout is kind of nice because we already were playing Bunker is what it's called, right? The 4 mana card that buffs all your stuff whenever you play minions. So it seems like a very nice fit with that. Gives you just another really good hit except for Call to Arms. So I guess like even Paladin and kind of, I don't know if you need to go like full dude synergy, but you might just play this. Like, this card just seems pretty solid. And it also might make Tarim better, which, like, even Paladin has typically pushed a lot taller recently. And maybe there's a bit more life for it to go super wide now.
God, what I would pay for Tarim to be good again. Oh, I miss that card so much.
I wouldn't count on it, but I was trying to go that route when I was theory crafting it, and I couldn't find a way to justify it, but maybe I was just wrong.
Yeah. I will say, though, Roffle made a good point, though, of, like, buffs like this, I feel like, are the safest buffs of just, like, bringing old cards up to standard power level. And I know they probably won't do this unless the card's in standard, but I would love to see them just kind of, like, modernize a bunch of these, like, old kind of cards that support archetypes and just, like, modernize their power level and just kind of see what it does to stuff in the format. But that is me dreaming a lot. I do want to talk about this last Paladin change, the promotion. This was the new spell. They gave a Silverhand Recruit +3/+3. It now gives a Silverhand Recruit +3/+3 and Taunt. Not as relevant, I think, as the Warhorse Trainer buff, but I think it's still a very nice change, though, for like any deck that was
Yeah, I mean, you get to do some cute stuff. Like, you lost the new coin promotion, and now the rogue can't dagger down the 1/1. Like, I actually played some games, and there were like enough scenarios where it made a lot of sense to protect my other like little guy. So, I mean, this feels good. Like, this card is another super busted one now. So,
Yeah.
It's kind of fun that we have these like completely just cracked Odd Paladin cards and things like that, and standard is still just languishing.
All right, let's talk about Rogue. Let's talk about the super controversial one. Edwin Defias Kingpin. 3 mana, 3/3 pirate, battlecry, draw a card. If you play it this turn, gain +2/+2, and repeat this effect. So I know Standard is mauling at this change. They absolutely hate it. So there was a little bit of logic behind it. Aleko, who's kind of the lead on the balance team, put out a twit longer on, the day of the patch, saying kind of this is why we buffed it, right? Because they had to lock in the patch about a week beforehand, before the Master Sword come up, and at the time Rogue was trash, and they wanted to buff Rogue card draw, and so they kind of took a big risk with Edwin. Turns out it was not successful, so I would expect a nerf on this sometime in the near future. But in the meantime, I think enjoy your 3 mana Edwin in Miracle Rogue is like the big shout, obviously, in Wild as well. I've also been playing it in Pirate Rogue, and it feels really good in Pirate Rogue because, believe it or not, it is a pirate, unlike OG Edwin. And it's nice. It's just kind of a third source of draw. So yeah, I mean, 3 mana Edwin, I don't think it's as meta defining as it is in Standard, but it is also very nice to play with in Wild.
It seems pretty good in Wild. There's I think it's the Chinese list that hit rank 1 there is the real deal.
Yeah.
Like, that deck is pretty nutty. It turns out if you're able to stack an Edwin early, or even a Sunstone Graveyard and then slam a Loatheb, it really makes it hard for the opponent to respond. And even if you don't have a Loatheb, there's not a whole lot of single target removal out there right now, so they just kind of die. Draka also very good in that deck, like the and this rated Tooth or whatever it is just outrageous for enabling those types of things. So yeah, you can spin through your deck real quickly with Edwin. A lot quicker now because not only has he had a reduced cost, but like he also has a little bit more support with like that Serrated Tooth, with that Sinstone Graveyard, so you get some redundancy. You don't have to go fully all in on a singular minion, which Edwin Van Cleef is when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
As a singular minion, only a 3-mana 3/3 that draws a card. So like, you know, you want that backup of the Sinstone Graveyard to, you know, make a big stealth lady, so you can have another target to hit your opponent in the head with.
Yeah, the deck, I'm going to be playing a lot of it. I'm going to be streaming a lot of it. The CN list, yeah, for anyone on in who doesn't know already, there's been a list posted by, I think, Lovely Duke, who is a Chinese player, posts a lot of stuff on Twitter. There's a Miracle Rogue list that is hit rank 1 and 2 legend by the same player, and it's running like Fly Buddha, the little 1/1 pirate that adds, little 1/1 pirates to your hand. That you most often see in Quest Rogue. It turns out, like, if you play that before you've transformed with Maestra, that discounts the nulls, and so it's also, like, really nice Door of Shadows fuel. I've been playing that deck and winning a lot, and like I said, I'm going to be streaming it probably a fair amount as well. Yeah, Edwin's broken, because it's not just, like, the... You know, for cards like this, right, that are enabled by how much mana you have available, the power level differs like hugely depending on how much extra mana you get. You know, I'm thinking about things like Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Like, mana changes on these cards are so significant. And also, when you throw in the fact that stepping it now is like a very, very big thing, because you end up gaining back 2 mana, because you only have to pay 3 on the first one, then you step it, and then you have a 1 mana Edwin. Like, you can just draw through your entire deck like so easily off a stepped Edwin now, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, I don't expect this one to last. I think this will definitely get reverted very, very quickly at the probably next opportunity. They'll go after it. It probably shouldn't have ever been buffed. I understand, like, I'm kind of talking about the logic, but Edwin was already pretty good in standard, and I think it's the type of card where you shouldn't really be buffing it, because, I mean, this is exactly what happens, right? Like, people post screenshots of them getting hit with a 2020 Edwin on turn 4. So it's a little bit confusing why they went for this one, despite the reasoning outlined, and I'm sure it'll be reverted very, very shortly.
All right. Believe it or not, Rogue did get some other card draw spells buffed. Speaking of modernizing old cards, Sprint got buffed again to 5 mana, and I think it's still
Put it to 4. Put it
still
to 4.
completely unplayable. Yeah.
Can you be really sure that Sprint has been actually buffed to 5 mana? Because I
have never seen it, so I can't tell you.
Okay.
Cannot confirm it in the real world.
I saw some stats on it. It's still awful in standard. Like, it's so bad.
Maybe they buff it to 4 mana draw 4, and then finally we're at something worth
now
playing.
we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we're cooking. It's like almost like a secret passage, except it costs 3 more.
Hey, if you prep it out, then it just costs 2, right? All right, we did get another one, though, that might be interesting to a lot of WoW players. Silverleaf Poison. This is the nature spell that gives your weapon, after your hero attacks, draw a card. Got buffed from 2 to 1. So Kingsbane Rogue is kind of the deck that people are looking at with this. Again, I cannot confirm that this has been buffed, because I haven't seen a Kingsbane Rogue. Like, I don't really know why people would play Kingsbane Rogue when Pirate Rogue exists in its current form, outside of just pure nostalgia. I mean, don't get me wrong, Silverleaf is a very nice buff from 2 to 1. Very nice buff. Does it give you a reason to play Kingsbane?
I mean, I like drawing cards, but drawing cards for slightly cheaper, and like when it's a permanent effect like this, you really don't feel the effects of it all that much. And this nerf, or buff rather, isn't going to be the thing that resurrects King. This is not a Warhorse trainer quality caliber of buff, so it's not going to do it.
Yeah, nice buff. Not impactful right now.
All right. Rogue got one last change. Hulkius. So this is the secret legendary from the new set. Let me read it because I'm sure you guys actually haven't seen it on the live server, unless you watch Roffle streams. And so Hulkius is a 4-mana 5/4 elemental with Death Rattle. Store Hulkius' soul inside of a friendly secret. It resummons Hulkius when that secret is triggered. It did not have stealth. It now has stealth. I don't think this solves the issue that we had with Secret Rogue in general, which is killing the opponent. It's nice. Like, Hulkius on its own is probably like a decent card. It just doesn't make Secret Rogue, I feel like, an appealing prospect anymore, or doesn't make it an appealing prospect regardless.
Yeah, no. I did have one opponent play this against me, and it was really cool. They played Sketchy into it, and then just kept like re-triggering the battle cry or the death rattle to the point where they just had, with Snowfall Graveyard too, they just had a board full of Hulkiuses that kept bashing me in the face and kept coming back. And because of the Snowfall Graveyard, there would be like 3 extra Hulkiuses in a single secret, and I wouldn't be aware of it. And it's just like, I can't escape. It was some serious Greatest Dinomancer shenanigans. But yeah, not a serious card, unfortunately.
That's kind of funny. I hadn't really thought about that synergy and stuff. But yeah, Secret Rogue. It needs more cards, right? It needs different cards. It doesn't need a slight buff to this one, I think.
Yeah, it needs a finisher. I think, as to Meow's point, it needs something that can end the game, and this is not a thing that can reliably end the game for you.
Yeah, that the sketchy Snowfall though, that is intriguing. Kind of exciting route, like an different way that you can take the deck that I hadn't thought about. So shout outs to Roffle's opponent. That being said, I'd be very surprised if we saw any Hulkius anytime soon. All right, let's talk about Warrior. Warrior got the Demon Hunter treatment where it got, I'm counting real quick, 7 cards changed. And wow. It really doesn't feel like it moved the needle on the class in either format, unfortunately.
What, 7 cards changed? Really?
I just counted, yeah.
Oh my god.
So a couple of them are reverts. So let's just kind of get those out of the way now. Tidal Revenant, this was the 8-mana elemental. It used to be a deal 5, a gain 5. It got reverted back to deal 5, a gain 8. And then Shield Shatter used to be 10 mana, deal 5. Cost 1 less for each armor you had. It got nerfed during the great Control Warrior nerfings of 2021. And it got reverted back to being able to deal 5. Was it even 2021 or was it like 2 months ago?
22. It was the last expansion we have.
Oh.
Yeah.
It feels like so long ago. What do you mean?
I know.
It's been years. Okay, I take it all back. 2022. It doesn't make it any less sad that they got gutted, and I don't think that they do anything really in Wild except for maybe Shield Shatter if you're playing kind of a pure Control Warrior build. It's an intriguing card again, but Control Warrior in Wild is also really funny. And then let's talk about the cards from this set. Let's talk about Sanguine Depths and Imbued Axe. So Sanguine Depths was the location where you would ping something for 1 and it would get one attack. It now is in a rage on a location where it deals 1 and gains 2 attack. It's a very nice buff. And the one that's kind of maybe the most impactful is Imbued Axe. So this is the 3-mana 2/3 weapon. After your hero attacks, it now gives your damage minions +1/+2 instead of +1/+1, with Infuse 2 +2/+2 instead, rather than Infuse 3. And so a very, very nice buff on the axe. So we're looking at Enraged Warrior as kind of like the home for these 2 cards. I know some people were hype about it. I don't know if you guys have tried it out yourselves.
I've had it played against me, and it feels about the same. Like, you know, the change to Sanguine Depths, that's probably just where it should have been to begin with. Like, it feels at parity with the other locations in terms of what they do for the mana cost and for like the number of treasures they get. Imbued Axe probably matters because like you draw it off of your weapon fetches if you're playing it, and then you don't necessarily like kill off your minions in a timely manner to get this infused. So like having the extra buff on the uninfused portion of it probably helps. It takes less to get it infused. So generally a better card. I actually learned what it did this week because people played it against me. I thought it was like since it got released until this week, I thought it only buffed a singular damaged minion on your board at random, but no, it buffs your entire damage board. So it's yeah, it can get out of control pretty quickly, but like I don't know, it's still you're still playing warrior, and it's got this like kind of weird in between. Is it a control deck? Is it a aggressive mid range deck type scenario? Where I don't think it's just that we don't have the good builds yet, because I think that there's been enough time. I think it's just maybe not a strong deck, but I don't. Unfortunately, most warrior decks aren't really strong decks right now. Is the big problem.
I think that the Enrage War is actually pretty solid. I think it's one of like I think it's not one of the absolute best decks in the format, but I think it's actually quite good. The buffs are pretty significant. The axe is kind of completely insane now. In terms of build, like I do think that you just build it full on aggro. Shocker that I said that. But I think you just build it with crab riders, and you don't really worry about much of the late game stuff. Like you cut the Remoria, you cut things like that, and you just kind of either run like Rampage, Shield of Honor. It's just about kind of just going down, hitting people as hard as you can, as fast as you can with buffed crab riders, Bloodsworn mercenaries. The deck, I again, like I think it's good. I do think that it suffers a little bit from feels bad syndrome, because you are gonna instantly lose to Big Priest a lot of the time. You are gonna instantly lose to Quest Mage. You are gonna instantly lose to the Reno deck, just removing your Crab Rider with a Hungry Crab, and the game just immediately is over. But it's pretty good against other aggro decks. It can hit people very, very hard, very, very quickly. It reminds me a little bit of Inner Fire Priest. It doesn't quite have the insane sort of like burst potential of Inner Fire Priest, but in terms of just like, I think they're like pretty similar decks in terms of they're snowbally, and when they're given kind of time to just like wind up, they hit very, very hard. And then they also cry when you remove their stuff. So good deck. Don't expect it to pick up too much just because of what I was talking about. But yeah, I think the buffs have been pretty significant. And if it gets like one more buff, I could definitely see this being among the better decks in Wild.
Last thing is that I'll say about it is that it's also a deck that runs Risky Skipper in potentially a world where Odd Paladin exists again. So, like, if Odd Paladin rises in popularity, I mean, that alone could theoretically carry like that matchup would potentially carry the deck.
Yeah, the axe, the weapon is like the buff that felt the most relevant to me. Like that, it feels really good to play the axe now, and makes me really want to play like a tempo mid-rangey style version of the deck rather than like a pure control combo version of the deck, because that axe buffing up anima extractors and risky skippers and things like that feels really, really strong and very snowbally for the board that and the tempo that you're creating, which is really nice.
Yeah, you can't ever play it like a slow combo deck, because like Theatar and Rats exist, and again, just like kind of slowly winding up for like a turn 8 OTK that doesn't really beat taunts is sort of like not the way to do it. Like you just want to punch people as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and just hope for the best.
All right, and then we got 3 more warrior buffs to old cards. One of them that I still didn't know what the text was until Tuesday. So Cruel Taskmaster, I could have sworn this always gave +1 attack. Apparently I am dumb, and it's always been a 2-mana 2/2, deal 1 damage to a minion, give it +2 attack. But it is now a 2-mana 2/3. So probably like a standard piece for that Enraged Warrior deck. I don't think it's going to be very good in Wild. And then a couple of surprising ones. So Slam. This was a 2-mana spell that said deal 2 damage to a minion. If it survives, draw a card. Got buffed from 2 to 1. And then Bash. Bash now is a part of that 2-mana deal 3 series for every class. And might all of a sudden become like the best version of that, where it's 2-mana deal 3, gain 3 armor. So very kind of equivalent to something like Drain Soul for Warlock. And so these are some 3 buffs here. Just some nice nice buffs, especially in Slam and Bash. So Slam probably goes in your Odd Warrior, Slam and Bash, and probably Shield Shatter go in your Control Warriors or Dead Man's Hand Warrior decks. But in general, I don't know that these buffs, while they're nice, like I think the Bash one is insane. It's very good for Warrior, but you're still playing Warrior. None of them really kind of help the archetype, survive in current Wild.
Yeah, the Bash one is another like modernizing change. I would say like armor is better than lifesteal, but lifesteal scales better. So with like spell damage, so maybe but yeah, it's just a better card. Does Bash still go face? That makes a difference too. Like that's a pretty good card. But like it's still a warrior card, and warrior doesn't have the support that it needs to win games of Hearthstone and Wild right now, or in Standard. It seems. I guess is the big thing. So yeah, it's just kind of in a bad spot, and these are undeniably like upgrades for cards that were already playable, but probably not enough.
Yep. Good Control Warrior cards. Control Warrior. LOL.
Yeah, that's kind of the summary for Warrior. Is just Warrior. LOL. It kind of feels like same thing with Demon Hunter. So in general, we got a huge set of buffs here. It feels like Paladin and Edwin were the two that were actually feel like wild relevant, might actually shake up the meta a little bit, as well as all of the nerfs that we saw. So kind of just to wrap up the episode here, because we're getting a little bit late. Just generally, kind of how are your post-patch feels? What does the meta feel like? What decks do you feel like are the biggest winners, biggest losers? What are kind of your votes for strong decks to keep an eye on?
I think like we talked about earlier on, like I'm generally enjoying the metagame a lot more. Like just simply the absence of big rogue, like Corb said, is is a big determining factor for why that is. But also, I think the big winners, like we talked about, were also those board-based decks. Druid taking a pretty big hit, Shaman, and obviously Big Rogue, which just kept things completely off board, starting on as early as turn 2, often pretty regularly on 3 and 4. Just having the ability to play for board, seeing decks like Even Shaman, Odd Paladin come back, I think those were probably the two of the big winners from the set. And Even Shaman didn't get a single card touched on their side, so it's purely a matter of subtraction for Even Shaman bumping up. Like Shaman is still successful in the class right now, and that's the reason why. So yeah, I'd be curious to see some more exploration in terms of like decks that had fallen out of favor in that sort of genre, to see if other things can come back, if we can start actually fighting for board for more than just to infuse our Sire to Nathrius in Druid. Like that would be interesting to me. So I'm hopeful. I think that, yeah, like Edwin and Miracle Rogue is probably too good even in Wild. So thinking that maybe that'll get reverted. And like Corb talked about earlier, this for Wild does appear to be a pretty successful patch. It would be nice to see things like this more often, but like you also do run the risk of like shifting things too far and breaking things a little bit further in a way that people don't like. So I'm fine with like multiple like iterative changes over the course of multiple periods of time, rather than just like one big lump sum of changes. So hopefully it's something that they revisit. There are a lot of changes here that actually didn't move the needle at all, and I think that's always the risk with buffs, and why I'm hesitant to say the buffs are better, because a lot of times they just have no meaningful impact whatsoever. And so like it's typically easier to disrupt things by nerfing cards, and that's why that's typically been the path in terms of that, because like the discrepancy between an absolutely broken card and an unplayable card is great, but like the discrepancy between a playable card and an unplayable card, it can also be very great. So even if you buff an unplayable card, that doesn't necessarily make it a playable card, and that's like that's the problem with like fixating too much on buffs. You also, run into issues with potential power creep, so there are future implications for constantly buffing cards. Like if you make old cards stronger, you're implicitly making all cards stronger, which kind of pushes things forward a little bit further. So all of that is to say, I'm enjoying myself in Hearthstone right now, and in terms of the wild, this is a good patch. I think more could be done, but I'm happy with where things are right now.
Yeah, I feel like we should at least mention in terms of talking about the nerfs and stuff. It was confirmed they looked at banning, I think it was Illuminate or Neptulon. I don't think we had a chance to talk about this last week. It was mentioned when the actual patch happened. So that was the one other change that the team looked at, was a potential ban of those cards.
Would have been nice, but I also understand. Like, I had a lot of big rogue apologists in my YouTube comments and Twitch chat that are saying that no, it's like Kobold Illusionist did nothing wrong. It's actually a worse deck and inconsistent compared to Big Priest, which is just like, that's factually untrue. Like that's not the case. You can make an argument the Big Priest is essentially doing the same thing, but like and I would tend to agree with you, but it's not as consistent, it's not as popular, and it was not as strong as Big Rogue like we talked about last week. So I understand why they didn't change it. That doesn't mean that I agree with the decision not to change it, because I think it still does have the play pattern issues, which has been at least in the past, a more common motivator in terms of intervention for wild than simply power level. I understand that they typically look for like that mix of play pattern and popularity and success rate, but I don't know. I don't think Illuminate is terribly healthy in wild. So I think one of those taking a hit, I would have been perfectly fine with, and I think would have maybe made things even better.
Yeah, I agree. The play pattern thing is always a thing, right? Where it's interesting to me why we talked a little bit about this last week, right? Of like why they hit Big Rogue and not Big Priest. Sort of thing, but I wouldn't be surprised, like we said last week, that maybe in a patch or two, I wouldn't be surprised if Big Priest eventually got kind of the same treatment. It's interesting that the two, what were the two options? Neptulon or Illuminate were the two options they were looking at potentially touching, which would just be bans to standard cards rather than a touch to a wild specific card. So it's like something like Shadow Essence. What would they move Shadow Essence to like 8 or 9 mana? But
I think the big thing about that is it speaks to the recognition that a lot of people like to play Big Priest, right? Yeah. Like they don't want to delete it, they don't want to, but they do want to take away the potential early game high rolls. Essence on 5 or 6 seems fine. Essence summoning Neptulon seems like, or Illuminate specifically is kind of like an issue.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if like, does their opinion change in a couple months on their stance on Big Priest and their stance on the specific cards. So it'll be interesting. And just know that, I guess, Blizz is looking out for all of you guys that hate playing against Big Priest.
Man,
ish.
I gotta say though, the thing that Roffle said, lucky this isn't early in the episode, like I'm winding down a little bit. I'll be going on a 10-minute tangent about how much I despise the Big Rogue apologists, because I saw so many comments about this, the Big Rogue apologists, and people like talking about how sad it is that the Dane's favorite deck, and shouts to Dane and stuff, but still, let's not pretend Big Rogue was like this incredibly special darling that wasn't doing anything wrong or broken or wasn't like as bad, worse than anything Big Priest was doing.
Just go quote tweet that tweet from 4 years ago. Just do it again, and it'll be fun.
I had somebody specifically say, why did they nerf Dane specifically? And I said, if Dane was the only one playing this deck, it wouldn't be a problem. But like, that's not the reality that we live in. And like, I had people, get into arguments with me saying that no, Big Rogue wasn't that consistent, it wasn't that popular, and I'm just like, no, there is data to support this. And then they would inevitably move the goalposts to where it's like, well, no, but Big Priest is doing the same thing, and I'm like, play pattern, yes, strength, no, like, no, these are not the same. It really is. Big Rogue, the best comparison really was like it's Big Shaman 2.0. Yeah. Like it was doing the exact same things as Big Shaman. I think that for that type of person that's going to, argue against that, regardless of the evidence that we did have, like the only downside of them intervening quickly is that like it didn't actually spread as much as it could have, and so it didn't actually reach a point where even some of those people that are now big rogue apologists are couldn't deny that fact. But
yeah, if someone's confused about the big rogue change, they should just be thankful about the big rogue change, because it means they didn't have to see it nearly as much as the rest of us. And and a month later, they'd be right there with the rest of us, kind of like screaming, I think, a lot of the time. Meow's original question, the winners of the patch. I think Even Shaman is just like the big winner. Like in terms of like big rogue, Even Shaman got rid of two of its worst matchups, like Free Shaman, and the Rogue, it feels like. But more than just like the win rate going up, I think Even Shaman just feels like a deck that you can actually play now. It's not nearly as tilting. Playing board-based stuff and kind of losing to Big Rogue and Snowfall Guardian was a quick way to delete the deck. And I think that's not nearly as much the case anymore. So yeah, Even Shaman definitely looking like the big winner. And right now, in terms of the stats and stuff, it looks far and away the best deck at like Diamond through Legend. I wouldn't be shocked if it drops off a little bit, because it is very like button decks don't typically succeed as much at higher levels of play, but I'm sure it's still quite strong at that. And yeah, if you want a Legend climb, guys, I would definitely recommend Even Shaman for sure.
Yeah, I think the patch in general was very successful. Like we said, both nerfs and, I mean, even though we got 22 buffs, a couple of them were hits, right? A lot of them were kind of complete whiffs, but I think in general the patch is very well received from people, and I'm excited to see kind of how the meta develops. I'm still a little bit scared of, stuff like Pillager Rogue and Quest Mage. Just kind of, that's just always a long-term thing at this point, where just like, yeah, well, Quest Mage still exists, which kind of sucks. The Pillager Rogue can still kill me on turn 4 if I leave a 3 health minion on the board, which is kind of scary. But other than that, I think in general, I'm with Roffle. I'm enjoying playing the format, and I think it's always been kind of my perception that for like the past 6 to 8 months, the meta has been fairly balanced in terms of like win rates of the top decks, from my understanding. Even if we've had some really gross decks like play pattern wise with Big Shaman and Big Rogue popping up, in general, like after those have gotten addressed, the metas have been fairly balanced. And it kind of feels like early days, but it kind of feels like this meta is shaping up to be the same.
Yeah, in addition to Big Priest, Quest Mage, and Pillager Rogue, like the one, I guess, hesitation I have with things right now, or maybe partial concern, is that maybe it's just, again, the contrast to the Big Rogue metagame, that like we lived through this with Quest Warlock or with Stealer Warlock. Like the contrast between something that was just miserable and something that's like at least playable, it makes that playable thing seem a lot better, So like we are a week out. If things don't change, we'll see where we are in 2 months or so, when we're starting to look at a mini set coming out.
Yeah, I will say it seems like Theatar has been very successful in kind of like curbing Pillager specifically.
I love Theatar. I'm gonna be honest.
I'm sure. It's Ruffle's favorite card. The Quest Mage as well doesn't seem like it's kind of running away with things. I did think, like, obviously it was a bit of a concern with alignment, the idea of alignment Shaman going away. Like, does this Mage become so much better? But it turns out there's a lot more room for aggro decks, and we're seeing like Quest Mage, Secret Mage, and even Shaman, and those decks seem to be doing pretty well into Quest Mage, and it's not running away with things too much.
Yeah, my concern wasn't really with the power level of those decks. It's like, these decks still exist, sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
But in general, I feel like power level wise, things feel kind of okay, right? There's no super clear outlier, at least in the early days of tier 1 busted deck. Like, I know.
Well, just wait for this Miracle Rogue stream. Yeah,
I'm waiting.
You wait and see what it can do.
I'm waiting for the 0-10 and to delete the deck. I'm ready for it. But I think in general, right, like Pyro Rogue still feels really strong, but it doesn't feel like oppressive, right? Even Shaman might feel oppressive to if you're playing like another board-based deck, but in general, I think win rate's not going to be super insanely high. I know people have been super hype about this, the Shadow Reno Priest. I don't know if you guys are believers or not, but multiple high legend people are talking up this deck that kind of originated out of the Chinese server. People are super hype on this deck. I'm not sold yet, but I don't know if you guys have opinions on that.
I think it performs better than expected. It seems like a pile of cards, and then you play that pile, and it's like, oh, the opponent keeps losing in some weird way. So I think it's a really interesting deck, and I enjoyed it. But I'm not the best person to assess whether something, because compared to the decks that I typically play, it's a phenomenal deck, and it's clearly tier 1. So it's like it's hard to make an assessment at times because of that fact alone. But it does seem like it has the potential to be the real deal.
Yeah, Roffle's it's like taking off weighted clothing, right? Like you've just been held down by a ball and chain. It's like, oh my god, I get to play Hearthstone cards.
Yeah, I was curious because I was checking my stats after your 0-10 comment about the Miracle deck, and I had an 80% win rate with that deck, so I think it's the real deal. Side note, I also had an 80% win rate with Darkest Hour, so please God don't let that be the real deal. Because that would not be fun. Yeah. I think it's certainly a lot more fair than Big Rogue was, though, but it does do very gross things in terms of play patterns.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the meta at home. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the weight of the Big Rogue shackles, I guess, being off and being able to play your favorite decks out there. Let us know down in the comments below what's working for you guys, what's not. Corbin Roffle, thanks again for joining me on an episode where we covered 1 million balance changes, it feels like. Appreciate you guys, and let the people know where they can find you and your post-patch content.
You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at Roffle, and Twitter and Instagram at RoffleHS.
And you can always find me at Corbett on Twitch and Corbettgames on Twitter and YouTube.
You guys can find me at Get Me Out on all those platforms as well. Appreciate all of you guys that listen all the way to the end. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys again next week. Later.